Welcome to the third and final chapter of Module 3, where we will take a step back and reflect on how these innovative financial approaches can help lessen disparities and increase equity. We will also consider that this looks like at a local level and opportunities to improve equity in resource allocation. But most importantly, we are going to look at what you can do to bring innovative financing to your local context. How does innovative financing improve equity? It is important to emphasize once again how incredibly important innovative financing is to improving equity in education. Equitable education financing means that it reaches marginalized and vulnerable groups, such as learners from minorities, lower socio-economic communities, learners with disabilities, and from migrant communities. When these groups are targeted in education planning, budgeting, and resource allocation, whether at the national, regional, local, or school level, and whether it is by government or non-state actors, it means that they are being recognized and that financing can address their needs so that they have equal opportunities in their education. According to the OECD, there are different ways that governments can allocate funding locally to support equity. This includes administrative discretion based on an assessment of local needs, incremental costs, allocation that shifts due to changes in each year, bidding and bargaining from local authorities or schools to offer additional funding, formula finding based on equity formulae such as those we looked at earlier in this module. What can be done at the local level? There is an immense role for equitable education financing to be determined and allocated in the most effective and impactful way at the local level to reach those that are most vulnerable. More funds from other sectors need to be allocated to education sector and more funds made available at the local level to be targeted equitably. According to UNESCO, 46% of countries devolved funds to the local level with a fiscal redistribution element to address equity. In Cambodia, for instance, school operating budget grants were introduced since the 1990s in selected districts, initially based on enrollment, and later expanding in the early 2000s to include variables that allow them to target disadvantaged areas. What made a difference in this initiative is that participation of the local community and subnational administrations meant that budget allocation was efficient and accountable. Direct community participation included supporting infrastructure development and ways for schools to formalize their own ways of raising revenue. It is really important that at the national level, the government takes a bottom-up approach to actively listen and consider the needs, perspectives, and voice of the local level. And it is equally important that the local level should inform education financing needs and priorities in the first place. In this sense, it would help determine the national budget based on the local situation and context. For example, a local education district may have specific groups such as a prominent migrant community or be situated in a rural and sparsely populated area, which may not be the case in more urban parts of the country. They may also have different levels of connectivity and access to equipment or devices that require additional support in order to deliver the same curriculum in different parts of the country and therefore offer equitable learning outcomes. For example, if the national curriculum requires for the use of the latest technologies or lab equipment, then some provinces may require additional funding to be able to offer the delivery of teaching than others. This would especially be the case, for example, in areas affected by emergencies, with prominent migrant populations or non-formal learning centers, as opposed to schools in urban or more privileged areas. A particular province or district may not have the latest equipment or infrastructure for priority and future areas of education, such as lab equipment or technology to support learners with robotic or artificial intelligence. Or a particular school might need to cater for learners with special needs, whether as physical, learning or social disabilities, for instance, that might require personalized learning approaches. In Thailand, at border areas, within ethnical areas, community learning centers need to offer accommodation because there are no roads to the centers and the distance are too long to walk. Moreover, basic needs for vulnerable students such as nutritious food in both quality and quantity for those that are living at the border or in the rural area is lacking. These students need extra funding and support from the local authorities and NGOs. The priority here would be to allocate funds to improve school infrastructure and train teachers to be able to adapt to the need of different learners to prevent them from exclusion. There is also an important need to ensure effectiveness of decision-making and resource allocation at the local level. For example, ensuring effectiveness in how school grants are utilized in order to target marginalized and vulnerable groups. A local area might also conduct its educational planning and budgeting in a local language as opposed to the national language, which highlights the needs for clear communication and transparency throughout the process. These examples show us how local needs and priorities may require different funds, but also for those funds to be allocated in the way that is specific and relevant to their needs. There is an example of innovative financing in the UK, an outcome-based contract to help youth not in employment, education, or training that allows local authorities to select the service providers that's suitable for the area and apply for social impact fund. What can you do? Now that we have a clearer idea of what can be done to improve equitable education financing and resource allocation at the local and school level, let's start to think how you as an individual can make a difference. You can contribute in many more ways than you might think. A large international or national company might have a corporate social responsibility (CSR) program that your local community school or learning center can participate in. Or a special foundation or fund might have opportunities to apply for support. And even if it's just sharing ideas over a conversation with local members of your community, this is already a way to have a great impact by spreading ideas for equitable education financing. One way that schools and the local school community can make a difference is by becoming a producer of resources that can be sold to raise funds for equity-related initiatives. This can include a school farm where learners not only engage in sustainable farming practices, but also enable the school to become a producer and supplier of fruits and vegetables that they can be sold locally and raise school funds. Another example is through the creation of local arts and crafts. In Papua New Guinea, the City of Lai has been working on initiative for secondary school to produce enough food for one nutritious school meal per day. Initially, the idea was to reduce dependency on external supply chains. On the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, the schools have been able to farm tilapia fish in their fish ponds and fruits and vegetables such as sweet potatoes, tomatoes, guava, and bananas. By creating a school garden, it is not only reduced external food supplies, but also created a form of providing nutrition to children and potential income generation for schools, where any surplus is sold to local markets. Another approach is to seek in-kind donations from local actors. For example, parents, community actors, museums, bookshops, or other small businesses might be able to donate or supply learning materials such as textbooks, toys, or even learning experiences for field trips to enhance the quality of learning. Finally, you can become an advocate for equitable education financing by supporting local school, civil society, organization, or community associations with your skills, time, knowledge, and ideas to help mobilize resources. As we can see, equitable education financing is not just about government budget and national policy making. There is a huge role that local communities, schools, and individuals can play, and that includes you.